If you're looking to buy an iPhone that's new, has decent battery and camera, and doesn't cost a fortune, I have some amazing news for you. And also some bad news for Tim Cook and the company. You want an Apple experience and don't want to pay extra? Here's one for you. The iPhone SE.
Ugh. Brother, ugh. What's that?
Yeah, exactly. Almost a decade-old design, 4.7-inch LCD HD display, a single camera system with 12-megapixel lens, and you pay $429 for a 64GB version. Deal?
No deal.
For less than $400, you can get yourself a Google Pixel 7a or a Samsung Galaxy A54, which are much better phones on paper. But Miles, they're not iPhones and everybody around me has an iPhone. Yeah, I hear you. Okay, so there might be another way.
There is another.
The new 4th generation iPhone SE. And Apple is already working on it, so we have some insights on what to expect. And I've decided to split the news into 5 categories, so if you're interested in something specific, you can just use the chapters to jump into this specific point of video. And we start with the camera. The CAD leaks provided by a trusted source, 91 Mobiles, suggest we will see a single camera module, which aligns with Apple's tradition of having a single camera on the SE line. That being said, the sensor seems to be much bigger than the one in the old model. In fact, the size matches more with the one in both iPhone 14 or iPhone 15. Now, despite the size, those two phones have very much different sensors in them. One is 12 megapixel and the other is 48. The 48 megapixel sensor allows not only to take super high-res photos, but also have much better quality digital zoom. And when you only have one camera on your phone, the bigger the number, the better.
That's what she said!
On a typical DSLR camera, you can zoom in by moving one glass further from the other. The perspective changes, but you don't lose any quality. Now, it ain't that simple on a smartphone. They're usually as flat as possible, and there aren't any moving parts in the cameras. That's why manufacturers decide to put on 2, 3, 4 or even more cameras on your smartphone, almost activating trypophobia in some people. When you have 2 lenses, you can set one to take standard wide pictures, and the other is always zoomed in so that you can take pictures from afar without losing any quality. Now, when you decide to put only one lens on your smartphone, you have to keep in mind that users might want to zoom in digitally, but now you're relying on the pixels that are left. And of course, we live in times of AI, and your smartphone is already doing its best to fix the quality of your pictures. But still, the more data you give it, the better the result. That's why we really hope that the camera that Apple chose for this iPhone SE model is the 48 megapixel one, not 12. And on one hand, I was like, there's no way Apple is giving you a better quality camera in iPhone SE than on iPhone 14, right? But then again, in November, Mac Rumors reported that iPhone SE will feature a 48 megapixel sensor. And believe it or not, it actually makes sense from a financial point of view, which might be the most important for Apple. They're already making 48 megapixel lenses for iPhone 15 and 15 Pro. And I don't think this will change for iPhone 16s coming next year. Standardizing on 48 megapixel sensors across more devices can actually streamline production and reduce the costs due to economies of scale. Apple could secure better deals by purchasing more sensors at once. It also simplifies software optimization for image processing across different devices. It's a win-win scenario, as long as it doesn't jeopardize the sales of the flagship models, of course. Now, transitioning between talking about the camera and the design, you can see on the latest renders that the backplate is almost completely flat, even the camera island. And I don't think that's possible. The renders we had last time when talking about the SE rumors are far more believable, as they feature a camera bump similar to the one on the standard iPhone models. That being said, both sources suggest that we're going to see a visible change in the design of the new iPhone SE to something that is more up to date with today's standards. In fact, the new iPhone SE might look almost exactly like the iPhone 14. That means it will also be similar to iPhone 13 or iPhone 15. Does that mean that Apple is preparing a major design change for iPhone 16s? You know, to make them look different than the budget models? Maybe. Or maybe it's just another example of unifying the design to optimize the cost. Another significant update, although it's difficult to see on these renders, is the inclusion of the action button, which replaced the mute switch in the latest iPhone 15 Pro. Yes, not even iPhone 15, but only 15 Pro. But we've seen additional buttons appearing on Android smartphones when smart assistants were becoming a thing. I believe the LG G7 ThinQ was the first one to have a dedicated Google Assistant button. And it makes perfect sense to include something like this in a smartphone. Maybe even more now than ever when generative AI features are becoming almost necessary to be included in all the new products. The only thing that I don't like about this new action button is its placement. You know, it works great when you're holding a phone like this and taking pictures, but when you hold it vertically, it's too far. It's much more convenient to just long press the power button to activate Siri. It feels more natural, and that's where it was on the LG G7 ThinQ I already mentioned. Another design change, and this one shouldn't surprise anybody, is transition to USB-C port. Knowing Apple, it's most likely gonna be the USB-C 2.0, like they did on the new iPhone 15, which is a much slower port than any other reasonable Android has, but I guess it's just the Apple way. But this is where it gets tricky for Apple, because according to the new EU regulations, these laws prohibit the sale of any new smartphone in Europe that uses any other port than USB-C, effective January 1st, 2025. Now, the SE3 model is fitted with a Lightning port, and if Apple wants to continue selling budget phones in Europe, they'd have to launch the SE4 before December 31st. But that's impossible. Apple has consistently released new iPhone generations in September since the iPhone 5, aiming to maximize sales during the Christmas shopping season. There is no way Tim Cook will launch anything in that window. So will they wait until spring when they usually launch the SE models? That means Apple won't have any budget smartphone in the offer for at least 3 months. My guess is Samsung is already working on filling that gap. Well played, Europe. Back to the design changes. The screen of the new SE unit will change dramatically. First of all, if you're one of the few remaining fans of smaller phones, bad luck. Everything suggests that the new SE will switch from 4.7-inch display to a 6.1-inch screen similar to the ones in standard iPhones. Again, the reason for that is optimization. It's obvious that things look much different on a smaller screen. It also means that developers have to spend additional time adjusting resolution and interface for websites, apps, etc. to fit this model specifically. Not only will the screen be bigger, but also some sources say that Apple is negotiating deals for OLED displays with Chinese Bowie and Tianma and Korean Samsung. Apparently, no manufacturer wants to agree on Apple's proposition of $20 per display, but Samsung is the closest one with a price of $30 per unit. It looks like Samsung will continue to celebrate every iPhone sold. But the fact that they still didn't choose any manufacturer for the displays really throws out the window any possibility of Apple launching that model together with iPhone 16s in September. According to the Alex source, early 2025 is the most likely. Also, many of you know that already, but 60Hz is the maximum that Apple will give you in that new display. Now let's talk about the final topic of this phone, the price. As mentioned before, Android smartphones costing way less than $400 offer bigger AMOLED screens, 90 or even 120Hz refresh, decent battery, and not so terrible cameras. If Apple wants to stay competitive in this market, they'd have to keep the price at least similar to the current $429. Is it possible? Probably not. I would bet on $500 to be honest. It is a lot for a budget model, but Apple never said they want to sell phones cheap. Quite opposite actually. Higher prices make the brand look more prestigious, and the products more valuable. And even though Apple sells less phones than they expected, they are still doing better than most competitors. And with this, thank you for watching till the end. I am Miles, you are now miles ahead, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.